Hey, hey guys.
What's going on? We are
Welcome.
live.
We're live. Wednesday night, 9:30. Think
Raney
it's
and
gonna
Roe.
work. Yeah. So normally Ro does the intro for this, but since it's my show tonight, I'm the one taking over this whole shindig. I'm gonna do our little intro spiel. Welcome. We're Rainy and Ro. I don't know what side of the screen you're
No,
actually
the
showing
first way
on.
was right. The
That
first
way?
way.
Yeah, okay, perfect. So last week, Ro interviewed me, and we got to know a little bit about my origin story, how I got involved in the art world, and how I sort of came to find myself in comics after not really having ever been exposed to comics until pretty recently. And we took some questions from our social media that were super fun. So tonight, I get to turn the tables and we're
Oh, I'm
doing it
nervous. I'm nervous.
tomorrow. Yes. So let's start a little differently than last week. I want to know how you describe yourself, Ro.
Hmm. How I describe myself.
Do you identify more as a comic author or just a general author? Tell me about that.
Yeah, I think that honestly, I think of myself mostly as a creative person in general.
Okay.
I think for me, I've just always loved ideas, even before like I remember even before like writing and like creating stories and doing things like I just remember always like being infatuated with my imagination, right? And just getting
Yeah.
lost in daydreaming and all of those kind of things, right? So for me, when I think about myself, I think about myself as a creative, a storyteller, a idea person, somebody who gets excited about ideas and possibilities and what we can do, right?
Can
The
confirm.
yeah, like how far can we take this? You know what I'm saying?
Right,
And
right.
I think that's how I think of myself.
Mhm. So our very first question is Ro Lamb your real name? Because it totally sounds like the perfect moniker for a really like cool author to use. So,
So my whole name is Rolando Lamb Jr. That's
woo,
that's my whole name.
woo, got like some aristocrat in the house.
Right,
Love
right, right.
it. So that actually, what you were saying about how you sort of identify as more of an overall creator and creative rather than just solely as a comic author, or I know you write fiction and novels as well. You
Right,
dabble in film. Um,
right.
so we know that you are currently a professional writer, but did you ever think that you were going to be something else?
Yeah, so
Yeah,
I just knew I was gonna play in the NBA. I knew that when
right.
I was a
Because
kid.
your family is
Right,
like a
right.
line of NBA players.
Right. So my dad, he played college basketball at Virginia Commonwealth University. He got
Okay.
drafted and played professionally. And then I like my uncles played basketball, and
Yeah.
I mean, I just grew up around basketball. My little brother plays in the NBA now. And so we all were coming up thinking like we're all going to play in the NBA. And so
Yeah.
I just knew that that's what I was going to do. Um, but I do remember in the seventh grade, that's when the seventh grade was when I really started to say, I don't know if I want to play basketball for
Okay.
my life. But
Yeah.
that was what I thought I was going to do. I thought I was going to play basketball.
Can I tell you a secret?
Yes.
I almost went to VCU.
Stop it. For real?
My dad was a professor there. Yeah.
When was he a professor there?
uh the early 2000s. The early 2000s.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
That
Uh-huh.
is amazing.
I know it's when I almost went to their art program because they have a really fantastic art program.
Yeah. Wow.
Our worlds are colliding,
Yeah.
bro.
That's crazy.
so, so in seventh grade, and this is, again, you've set me up perfectly for my next question. You started thinking in seventh grade that maybe playing ball wasn't what you wanted to do,
Yeah,
despite that being sort of this generational mantle
yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
has been passed down through your family. I'm starting to connect some dots
Right, you see
here
the thread, see the thread.
in your stories. Uh, so, what was the book or the comic or the piece of poetry that you remember being the defining moment of like, I want to be a writer because of this person, because of this piece of writing?
That's a great question. I'll say this. I'll say Lord of the Rings was
Yeah.
the first time that I realized, or that I experienced fantasy.
Yeah.
Um, and you know what's funny about that is I think I was like 12 or 13, around sixth or seventh
Yeah.
grade. Um, and I had a wonderful mentor. Her name was Miss Julia. I love Miss Julia to death. She told me, she mentioned something to me about Lord of the Rings one day.
Yeah.
And it was right around when the movie was coming out. And I said, Lord of the Rings, what's that? She said, what is that? And so
Oh man.
she took me to see the movie,
Why?
introduced me to the books.
Oh
And
wow.
I just remember going to the bookstore and saying, do y'all have anything with orcs in it? Like, I just saw Lord of the Rings. Do you have anything with orcs in it? And they took
Works
me
in
to the fantasy section,
it. Yes.
and my mind was just blown. Like, I was like, what
Oh
is
my
all of
God.
this? And I don't think at that point I knew that I wanted to be a writer at that point,
Yeah.
but I knew that I wanted to be a part of this world. Whatever this was, I
Right.
wanted to be a part of this. So that was one defining moment. Another defining moment was when I was 17 and I was sitting at a basketball game, and there was a friend of mine. He's older than me. He was sitting next to
Hmm.
me, and he said, he was writing in a notepad. And I looked, I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm just writing some poetry. I was like, doing what? Writing some poetry. So I looked,
Yeah.
and he's like, yeah, anybody can do it. I'm like, anybody can write poetry? He's like, yeah, man, you can do it. I'm like,
Yeah.
he's like, yeah, just put words together. And I was like, oh. And I just started writing poetry. And I actually might have been a little younger than 17 now that I think about it. Because he was probably 17, and
Okay. You were
I
younger.
was probably like 15, 14 or 15, because he was older than me.
Yeah.
I really looked up to him. Jeremiah, that's my boy. Um,
Mm.
and actually his last name was Lamb as well, Jeremiah Lamb.
Nice.
And so after that, I fell in love with poetry.
Yeah.
So those were my two defining moments. But the poetry piece, that's actually when I started writing poetry. You know what I mean? That's when
Okay.
I started writing poetry. Um, so I think that would be my answer to those questions. That was a good question, though. I want to
Oh,
think more
thank
about
you.
that.
So, building on that question,
Yeah.
you really, I know that you are an avid fantasy reader. We share a lot of the same tastes. We both
Right.
love Brandon Sanderson,
Right. Right.
Tolkien.
Right.
Like I too was introduced to the world of fantasy through The Hobbit. Like my dad handed it to me when I was like 12 years old, and I was like, and
Yeah.
that was it, you
Yeah.
know. Comics though.
Mhm.
Were you really into comics as a kid, or was that something that came later?
Yeah. So now this is an interesting story right here, I think.
Okay.
Um, when I
Yeah.
was a kid, I actually was not allowed to read comic books.
Oh,
So my dad was a pastor, and he
okay.
was very like strict about certain things.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so the thing that I loved about comic books though was that they were stories, and at that time they were like $3, right? So
yeah,
I could get one super easy.
yeah.
And so I spent a lot of time like reading comic books, but I was like sneaking them. You know what I'm saying? Like I would get them, read
Mhm.
them, and hide them. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And I just remember my dad. He found my stash and threw all my comic books out.
Oh my God.
And by this point, I had like notebooks and like notebooks of like my own little ideas for things that I had created,
Yeah.
and just notes and what characters, just random stuff. And my dad, he doesn't remember that. He doesn't remember this, but he told me that comic books were demonic. That's the first thing. He told me they were demonic. And
Oh
then
my
he told
God.
me that, and I said, well, Dad, this is what I want to do with my life. And he said, well, that's demonic as well.
Oh
And
no.
I just remember
Yeah.
in that moment just being like, well, it's just gonna have to be what it is because this is what I love.
Yeah.
And so I say that to say I've always been into storytelling. So I've always been
Right.
into storytelling, artwork, creativity, and comic books. It was less about the superheroes.
Yeah.
Although I love superheroes, but it was more about the experience of the stories
Right.
and just getting lost in that world.
Yeah. How like immersive it is to
Right.
be able to read and follow this narrative while also looking at artwork, and
Yeah.
it's like very easily consumable, right? Like
Right.
they're short.
Right.
If you're sneaking them, you can
Right. Right. Right.
probably read them in about 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. That's really fascinating to me because I feel like a lot of authors that I work with and that I talk to have a really similar experience growing up where like they weren't allowed to read like magical fiction specifically. Like I have a lot of friends that they were not allowed to read like Harry Potter or Lord
Right.
of the Rings
Right.
or anything like that because of like the religious restrictions around that. And it created this ironically even more magical quality to
Yeah.
the experience of reading those things. And it's really fascinating to me that there's a whole generation of authors like you that are sort of born of that era of like, no, 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 we're going to try and keep them
Right.
from reading this. And, you know, one of my favorite Jurassic Park quotes, life finds a way.
Yeah. 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 Right. For sure.
and and this is what you do for a living now. I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this this leads to kind of actually my next question, and you can tell me if this is now repetitive after sharing that. What is the most challenging obstacle or the hardest lesson that you've had to learn or overcome being a professional writer?
It's funny. I was thinking about this today a little bit
Yeah.
actually, and I was thinking about um, being a writer. The hard thing about being a writer sometimes is a lot of it is based upon your ability to self-start.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and so what I've had to learn to do is motivate myself to move, even when it feels pointless, right? Or it
Yeah. Yeah.
feels scary. Even I'm in a place right now where I don't know what idea to work on, right? Like I feel
Mhm.
like I'm in
Mhm.
like this limbo zone where I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, so I finished up this over here and I finished up these three things, and now I'm like, okay, do I keep working on those things or do I come up with something else, right?
Right.
But the thing is, nobody is with me throughout the day to say, hey, you got to write this, or hey, you got to. So I have to
Yeah.
be able to say, okay, this is what I'm going to do today, right? I have to be able
Yeah.
to self-start myself, right? And
Yes.
I think, I think that's one of the hardest things about adulthood as well, because
Yes.
when you're in like a kid, like you go to school, it's like things are there for you to do, and
Yeah.
you do these things. But once you become an adult,
Pressure,
it's like
man.
you're right, right. It's like once you become an adult, it's like, okay, I really don't have to do none of this stuff. Now
I
there's
know.
consequences if you don't do certain things, but it's like,
Right.
if I go 3 days without writing, nobody is gonna say anything to me.
Mm-mm,
Nobody's gonna be like, "Hey,
mm-mm.
why haven't you written? What do you?"
Yeah,
I
yeah,
gotta live with that and I gotta deal with that, right? And so
yeah.
I think for me, that's been the biggest thing that I've had to learn to do is do the work,
Right,
and I was
right.
talking to my dad. Now, again, it's funny because my dad doesn't remember telling me those things, and he's
Yeah,
super supportive of where I am right now.
I
And I was
love
talking to
that.
my dad, and I was telling him like about the things I've been working on and just things
Yeah.
moving forward. And he said, man, I'm proud of you, bro. I'm proud of you doing it. Like I'm proud of you. And he said, I'm glad to see you walking in your gift. And I said, I don't know
Mm,
if it's a gift. Like, I feel like anybody can write, it's just a matter of, sitting in the chair and doing it. And my dad said, but that's the gift. The gift
yeah,
is that you are able to sit
right.
yourself in a chair and do the work. That's the gift. And that really helped my perspective on how
Mm-hmm.
I look at my skill level, right?
Yeah,
It's not just about the words on the page, it's about the skill of doing the work. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah. We've had conversations about that before, about the line between, can you learn to be an artist?
Right,
Sure.
right, right,
Will you be a great artist?
right.
Depends. How bad do you want it, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
Um, so so building on that, what does an average day in the life of a professional author look like then?
Mhm.
How do you build your own sort of self-determining, self-sufficient structure in order to be as productive as you are? Because I mean, based off of the interactions you and I have, that's some like serious production
Yeah,
going on.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So you want to know like my daily schedule?
Yeah, yeah. What's your day look like? What's a day
Okay,
in the
yeah,
life
yeah,
of
yeah.
Roe
So
look like?
so we get up in the morning. Nah.
Hmm.
Nah, so we wake up, we get the kids ready, get them
Yeah,
to
yeah,
school, and then once we get them to school, drop off at school, daycare, and then I'm back home by, I mean, we're up at like 6:30. I'm back home by like 8:30, 9 o'clock.
all right, so I'm waking
And
up.
8:30, right? 8:30, 9 o'clock. Um, I I find that if I'm not sitting down writing something,
Mm, yeah,
I probably am not gonna write for the day. Like
yeah,
it's just, I
yeah,
don't know, it's weird. Like if I'm not doing something by 9:30, I'm probably not gonna write. So I try
yeah,
to get, 9 o'clock, 9:30, I'm there. You know what I'm saying? And if I get a good 2 to 3 hours, 9:30 to like 12 or 12:30, get some good writing in, then I take a nap. I gotta take a nap. I take a nap. I take a daily nap. Like I
oh my
gotta take a
God.
gotta take a nap. If I don't take a nap, I'm
I
toast. Gotta
I'm
take a nap.
so jealous.
So I take my nap, right? Take my nap,
Yeah,
and then once I wake up from my nap, I might do a little bit more writing. Usually though, that's more like, I'm sending out emails or
yeah,
I'm, doing like more like administrative stuff.
yeah,
Or I'm like brainstorming like something different than what I wrote earlier.
right.
Um, and then that's probably like 2 or 3 hours right there. And then I'm picking up the kids from school. And
Yeah,
then, it's doing homework with them and dinner and
yeah, that
um,
family life.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's generally, how the day goes. Now, my writing times are different. So I've learned that writing is not always just sitting down at the keyboard writing. It's
Yeah,
also, it could be, outlining where I'm, taking my note cards out and I'm setting up
right.
scenes and I'm thinking through like, okay, what structure am I going to do? How am I going to, do this, do that?
Yeah.
Outline, setting up the beats, all those different things, right? So writing time can look a little different on some days, but most days I'm sitting at the keyboard and I'm putting words on the page.
See, I love the way that you have your day structured. I'm honestly super jealous because I feel like there's this, I don't know who put this misinformation out into the universe where people just think that as a professional creative, you are like nose to your desk
Right,
for a full 8-hour day. It's like 9 to 5, and then you sign out, and like
right,
that's that. Because that is not how it
right,
works at
right.
all. At all. And I love that, you know, you and I can think off the top of my head at least three other full-time authors that I know who are like, I have to take a nap every day. I feel like maybe this is the ingredient that I'm missing. Do I need to start taking a nap every day?
I thought I was like the only one.
No, it must be the secret. It's gotta
Must be.
be.
Must be.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Um, so this is my last interview question because you know we're getting in on that time there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
If you could leave behind one legacy as a
Mm,
writer,
mm.
what would it be?
Wow. One legacy as a writer.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a tough one.
Mhm.
Now, when you say legacy,
Mhm.
do you mean like, what do you mean? Like, do
Totally up to interpretation.
okay, what I think,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
okay, that's
Yeah.
perfect. That's perfect.
Yeah.
Um, I think that the legacy that I would want to leave behind is, I would want people to say that two things. I would want them to say that I was prolific, that
Mhm.
I consistently put out good work. And two, I would want them to say that I built community wherever I went.
Oh
I just
yeah.
really believe in relationship. I really believe in collaboration. I really believe in, um, working with people. And as a writer, it can be so solitary. Um,
Right.
and I think there's just something so special and so powerful about connecting with like-minded creatives, whether they're also writers or whether they're, illustrators, like
Yeah.
whatever. Like I
Yeah.
just think there's something so powerful about that. And so that's what I would want people to say. He was prolific, he consistently
Yeah.
put out good work, and he built community and relationships everywhere that he went.
I love that. I think you and I line up very much so on
I
that.
agree.
So feel like, and I like that you didn't name a specific body of work that you wanted to be your legacy.
Word.
I like that. I think that's really cool.
I thought that's what you were
So
looking for at first. That's why
yeah, that's why I was like, nope, nope, leave this up to interpretation. I want to know what
word.
your like real thoughts about, what legacy is, what that can look like.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
I think that's really interesting. So I have a couple questions
Okay. Talk to
from
me.
people from our socials.
Okay, what the people saying?
So what are the people saying? They want to know. They want to know about the mysterious Roe Lamb,
Yes,
the
yes.
NBA dynasty prodigal son
Right,
that
right,
took a sharp left turn and became a great comic author.
right.
So the first one is, how many issues do you have planned for Scarlet Ranger?
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. So for this first arc, we have 3 issues planned. Um, and I think I want to get to at least 25 issues. I want to get to
Yeah,
25 issues of Scarlet Ranger. Um,
we got some
that's
work
as
ahead of
far as
us,
I can
Ro.
see. What did you say?
We got some work ahead of us.
Oh yeah, we got a ways to go. But I want it to be something that's like, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, it's
Yeah,
like, yeah, like it's a compendium of a
yeah,
great superhero story. Or maybe not even a
yeah.
great one, but just a superhero story.
I'm already thinking about that omnibus and what that hardcover is going to look like. Like, we've got
Yes.
this. We've
Talk
got
about it.
this.
Talk about it.
So, the second question I have for you,
Yes.
how do your boys
Hmm.
respond to your comics?
Yeah.
And do they have any spoilers for upcoming issues of Scarlet Ranger?
They do not have spoilers. I can tell you that. They do not have spoilers.
Oh,
But they respond very differently, right? So I have 4 sons.
okay. Yeah.
And my oldest son, he loves books. Like like when he gets things, like he
Oh,
really
it's
takes
so
care of it.
good.
He's like, oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Got a comic book, right? So he's taking care of it. My middle son, Kingston, they're the 2 main ones that really like focus on it. My middle son, Kingston, he's going to be an artist when he gets older, right? So he's like Daddy, like, can we make a comic book like that? Can we, can we create something? Like, what can we,
Yeah.
and so he has like these little, I showed him how to make these. You can make like a zine out of one piece of
Yeah.
paper. Like you can fold it.
Yeah.
You seen that? Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So I showed him how to do that. And so we'll make those, and then he'll
Oh,
like write little stuff in there. And he's like, Daddy, I wrote a book.
awesome.
Daddy, I wrote 3 books. So he'll come do that. And he's like, hey, when can we make a comic book? So that's what he's like, when are we going to do our thing?
Yeah.
And then Zion, which is my third son, he's like, so when are the toys coming? When are the action figures coming?
Yeah.
I want to play with Scarlet. When is that coming? And my youngest son, he's still too young to really know what's happening, so he doesn't really, he doesn't really say much. But that's really how they, they respond. I think they love it. Like I think they don't really fully understand like what it is yet.
Right.
But I think that's what's so exciting about saying like I'm gonna have 25 issues of this, because down the road is gonna be like, look, your dad did it. Your dad wrote this. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So yeah.
I'm surprised they don't ask you if you are Scarlet Ranger.
They don't ask me that.
No, that would have been the first thing I would have thought.
I must not be cool
they
enough.
definitely ask. Yeah, but there's a lot of parallels, like even kind of aesthetically, and sort of like, you're a little bit of a book nerd, and and Dion is kind of like a tech nerd, so
true.
it really would make sense to me. You're like, oh,
yeah.
Ro, are you? So my last question is actually from Joey from Dear Mother, and he wants to know, what is your craziest client story? Somebody that you've been writing for or with, and it was just like off the wall, like what is happening?
A client?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's the reason why that question is really interesting to me is because I've had interesting situations like with people, but none of them have actually been like clients. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. I've had really good interactions with people.
That's great.
Yeah, I'm trying to think like crazy. Like, I don't know. I'm gonna have to think about that one. I don't know. I have to think about that.
Give it a couple years.
Yeah, let me see that. Yeah. Let me answer that. Let me answer that in a little bit.
We'll roll that one over to our next episode. We'll check back in and
sorry, Joey. I got
crazy clients. I'll throw some your way.
Yeah. But the other reason why that's an interesting question is because as a writer, I don't know that we have clients.
Interesting.
We do have clients. We can have clients.
Yeah.
But I think, like for me, I feel like I'm still in the beginning stages of this creative process. And so I'm hiring a lot of people more so than they're hiring me. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah.
So that's an interesting question, though.
That is an interesting question. I would be really curious, and I know that we're technically going over time, but I'm going to say it anyway. I would be really curious to know. So, like, I have clients, that is the basis of my business model.
Right.
That is like my day job, is working with my clients. Very rarely do I get to like hire anybody or work in like a more collaborative way, like you and I do. But you get to like build a team and then work within that team. And so I would be curious how you like define a client versus the way that I define a client.
So I would define a client by somebody who's paying me to do a service.
Right.
So I've been in situations where, so he wasn't actually paying me, but he had brought me on to write something with him. Right. And I ended up having to walk away from it because he had a certain way he wanted it to be written. And I wasn't, I was like, I don't really think, it wasn't that I couldn't do it, but it was like, you have a certain way you want this done, and I think,
Yeah.
I don't
I'm
really
not the right
necessarily,
person for
yeah,
it.
I don't necessarily write
Yeah.
like that. You know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, so I've been in that situation. Usually, my clients, though, when I did have clients, they're not in the comic book world. They're like, so I had clients who I was writing emails. I was writing emails for a nonprofit organization
Yeah.
for like,
Yeah.
they raise money for like politicians and other
Cool.
nonprofits. And so I didn't even talk to them. They had me on retainer. And so they would just like send me money every month. And then
Like just
like there were months where like I didn't hear anything from them, but
wow.
money would come in. And then,
You'd be like, thank you.
right. But then one day he would be like, hey, I need this email. And when they said they needed an email,
Oh,
they
it's
needed
like
the email in like 30 minutes. You know what
right,
I'm saying?
right. Like
So it's
right
like,
now.
we're gonna pay you and we're not gonna talk to you for 3 months. But when we hit you up, we need you to be there.
Wow.
Um,
What a weird
yeah.
setup.
That was
I
a
like
really cool situation though. I really wish I could get that back.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, who doesn't? Jesus.
Right, right. Yeah.
Well, do you have anything that you would like to wrap up with? Those are the end of my questions from our audience. Do you have
Yeah.
anything that you wanna add? You wanna say maybe to people who are currently working in the indie space and
Yeah. I think that I feel like I always say this, but I think it's just so important to say is like, don't wait to start that thing that you want to start.
yeah,
Like, when I started Scarlet Ranger, I was thinking so far ahead of myself, like, oh, it's going to be this much money and it's going to do, like I was getting so overwhelmed with what I
yeah,
didn't have.
right,
And then
right.
one day I just said, you know what? I'm going to just do what I can do. It doesn't cost me anything to open up this Google Doc and start writing the script. And
Yeah,
I wrote the script. And then once I had the script, then it was like, okay, I probably want to get an editor. Got some editors, right? Paid a
yeah,
little bit, got some editors. And it was like, okay, now I need to find an artist, and I just started following these steps.
yeah, yeah.
And so I just think like so often we can get bogged down with the end goal. The
Mhm,
end goal, yes, it's
mhm.
going to take a lot to get there.
Yeah,
But what I find is that if you do the little steps,
yeah.
you know what I'm saying? It just adds up. And then you look up and you're like, oh,
Shit,
you know
I'm
what I'm saying?
here.
Like, oh, raised, $6,700, like 240 people just backed me on Kicks. Like, what? How did
What?
we get here? But I just
Yes.
followed the little steps. Yeah, I just followed the little
Yeah,
steps. And so I would just say, like, start now, start before you're ready, take that step even before you see the bridge there.
yeah.
And just put yourself out there and just keep going. That's what I would say.
I think that's perfect. And applicable to all creators, not just people who are working in like the indie comic, indie authors space for
Yes,
sure.
for sure.
Baby steps lead to the place that you're trying to get to.
For sure. For sure.
We tend to forget that with our sort of instant gratification culture that
Yes.
we're
Yes.
involved in. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Well, well, we're officially way over time.
But they don't know
I
that.
they
They
don't.
don't know. We didn't tell them. They don't know.
Oh no, I've let the secret out.
Oh, this was great
uh,
though.
this is really good. I find it really fascinating the way that our lives continue to sort of overlap
Yeah.
in surprising ways.
Yeah.
Like it leads me even more to think that this thing was destined to happen
For
in one
sure.
way or
Divine. For
another.
sure.
Absolutely. And man, I have never wanted kids in my life, but the idea of three little boys coming up to me and being like, I want to make comics with you,
Yeah.
that actually makes my ovaries like physically hurt. So I may have to be talking to my husband because my fur children definitely are not making
Right.
comics
Right.
with me anytime soon. Definitely not.
Right.
Although they may find their way into some comics in the future, but
Word.
we'll save that.
Word.
So, can you please tell the people where to find you and where to find us?
Yes. You can follow me on Instagram at Rolam, on Twitter at RoroLam. My website is rolam.com. Also, we will be on Facebook. What's your Facebook page?
Rainy Days Art.
Oh, yeah, Rainy Days Art, easy. And I think mine is by Rolam on Facebook. But yeah, you can find me. You find me on there.
Yeah, I think you're just Rowan, actually.
Am I?
I think
No.
so.
So I have two pages.
Oh, you have two? Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So my regular page is Rolam, but my
Gotcha.
my writer page is by Rolam. I think. I could be wrong. We'll check.
We are noobs at
But yeah, please, all my people, if you could subscribe and share this, if you've got some value, if you like this, if you enjoy this. We have some really cool things coming up with the Raney and Rose show. Maybe some guests, maybe a Facebook page, maybe some social media things happening. But yeah, as we continue to build and grow out this space for creatives and like-minded, curious people, we just are so happy to have you guys here and just glad to be able to do this. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm just grateful to be here with Raney, chopping it up, talking about
yeah, doing the things we would be doing anyway.
Right. So yes, Raney, do you have anything else you want to say? Where can they find you?
You guys can find me at Rainy Days Art across all platforms, Instagram, Facebook. I think that's it. I think that's what I'm limited to. I'm not the most socially savvy person. And you'll be able to find Rainy and Roe pretty soon through all of those. And like Rose said, we've got some things coming up in the works. And I think that's it. That's it for me.
Awesome. Well, you guys be well. Thank you guys for tuning in. And that's it. This is a wrap. We love you.
Bye.
Peace.